Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, and I believe that the right book at the right time can change lives, and that all readers should read children's literature, especially adults. So, that's what we do here on the KidLit Love podcast. We celebrate all things children's literature: picture books, early readers, middle grade, and young adult novels for readers of all ages. In each episode, we'll talk with children's literature authors and discuss their books, their hopes, their dreams for readers, their writing process, and much, much more. Whether you're an adult reading to their inner child or connecting the young readers in your life with fantastic books, you've come to the right place. So grab a notebook to build your TBR, and let's get to today's episode of KidLit Love. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the KidLit Love podcast. I'm Stephanie Affinito, your KidLit loving host, inviting you back to another bookish conversation with a children's literature author. Today, I'm talking with Julie Berry. Julie is the author of multiple books, including New York Times best-selling and multiple award-winning novels. Novels like Lovely War, The Passion of Dulce, All the Truth That's in Me, and picture books too, like Night Frolic and Happy Right Now. She's here today to talk about her newest young adult release, If Looks Could Kill. This is a true crime nail-biter turned mythic odyssey pitting Jack the Ripper against Medusa. It's a defiant love song to sisterhood, a survival's battle cry, and a romantic literary tour de force laced with humor. There is so much to unpack today, and I cannot wait to get to the conversation, so we are going to get right to it. Julie, welcome to KidLit Love. I'm so glad you're here today.
Thank you, Stephanie. I'm delighted to speak with you. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, of course. I'm always excited when I get to talk to young adult novelists, or at least about their young adult releases. I seem to have fewer of those on the podcast, and so I just can't wait to dive into this book. There is a lot that we could go into. I can't wait. But before we get to the book, and before we get to all of those moving parts, so to speak, I would love to hear about you. Can you give listeners a little background about you and your journey through books? And not just the author journey, but you own a bookstore, and I can't wait to hear about that too. So just tell us all the things.
Sure thing. Well, let's see, my journey through books. So I'm the youngest of 7 children, and I grew up on a farm in Western New York in the same town where I now live, which is sort of a funny story in itself. But I grew up in a family that loved to read, and I had a wonderful little collection of children's classics at home that I read and reread over and over again. And I just always knew that I loved to read, as so many kids do. Um, and I dreamed of being a children's book author, I think, my whole life. But I didn't take that dream very seriously until I had kids of my own and was, reading more to them. And, I had a college degree in communication from Rensselaer, actually, a New York State school, not too far from you. And so I started to think, well, why not me? Like, why couldn't I? And it wasn't until after my youngest was born that I began to pursue it seriously. And I was living with my husband and our 4 children, 4 boys, in the Boston area at that time. And I started writing a humor column for the local newspaper. So I got to where I had a weekly column with the Metro West Daily News, which still is a paper in the suburban Boston area. And that really built my confidence that people wanted to read what I had to say. And it was a humor column, so it was sort of in the vein of a kind of an Irma Bombeck meets Dave Barry kind of approach, having a lot to do with my life with kids and, just living in the suburbs, raising a family. And so that gave me the confidence to eventually go back to school. And I got an MFA in writing for children and young adults from Vermont College of the Fine Arts. And so I've been writing books for kids ever since and published about 30. I've kind of stopped counting at 30. um,
Amazing.
but If Looks Could Kill. So I'm the author of Lovely War, The Passion of Dulce, All the Truth That's in Me, The Scandalous Sisterhood of Prick Willow Place. Those are sort of my teen novels that I'm known for. So If Looks Could Kill is the next novel in that sort of vein. Um, and I had so much fun writing this. I love this book so much, and I'm so excited to share it with the world. So I can't wait to hear what you liked about it, how you responded to it. Oh yes, and I do own a bookstore. I forgot to mention that.
Yes.
Um, how can I forget? Um, During the outbreak of the COVID epidemic, my family and I were living in Los Angeles, where we had moved in around 2014, and so everything shut down. Of course, our reason for being there sort of dried up. And meanwhile, the little bookstore in my hometown of Medina, New York, came on the market. Now, I hadn't lived there since high school, so I'd been away about 30 years. Um, and my husband and I looked at each other and said, why not? And, the way that people had their COVID project where they redo the patio or they redo the bathroom, we redid a bookstore. So we made an offer, took some time. Finally, the offer was accepted, and we put our family in the van, drove across the country in the middle of the pandemic, moved, and bought the business and started, bought the building and the business and started renovating and reopened it. So we've been there now for about 4 years of owning the bookstore, and it's just an absolute joy. It's so charming and beautiful. It's called Author's Note. My husband picked that name.
I love
Um,
it.
it's
Yeah.
my historical novels tend to have sort of long, chewy author's notes in them, so that's where we got the name. You can find us online on Instagram, and I'll talk about that at the end. But we're Author's Note Bookstore on most social platforms. We're authorsnote.com. And I just love it. I love seeing how books bring people together. I love seeing how books create community, how sharing, book clubs and recommendations with friends and with, booksellers and customers, how it just creates so much friendship and joy and belonging. And I think that's what I couldn't have fully anticipated, was just how much a bookstore would be a place where love and curiosity and creativity come together and allow people to connect in those ways. So that's my bookstore. But back to If Looks Could Kill, I want to hear what you responded to. I'm so excited to hear from readers and talk more about the things that really spoke to them.
Yes. Oh, I just have to say though, it sounds like this wonderful full circle kind of journey from dipping your toes in the writing and oh, people kind of like it and oh, I'll go learn more about it to over 30 books to now I own a bookstore and now I'm back home. It feels like this wonderful full circleness that is just a fun journey to listen to. It feels like a dream that I would have. Like, just go back, do the bookstore because you're right. Book people are the best people. And when you get us in the same room and we just talk and connect and wonder and ask questions and learn, there really is nothing like that energy in a bookstore space. And I feel like
Ooh,
you've got both sides, right? The bookseller, the bookstore owner, and the author who just gets to see it all unfold.
it's true. I think that dual perspective has been helpful. I think that a lot more authors should buy bookstores. I think that a lot more people should buy bookstores or start bookstores. I think small towns are the secret sauce that will
Mhm.
transform America's reading landscape.
Yeah.
Small towns are where property might be more affordable, and where the startup costs might be, more manageable. This is kind of a little side mission that I feel that I need to kind of preach the gospel of buy a bookstore or start a bookstore, because it is a lot of work, but it's not impossible, and it makes such a difference, and does so much to stimulate literacy in an area and to uplift the culture and the tone of a community, the value of property, draw people to a downtown district. I could talk about that all day, so I'll make sure we don't do that. But I'm a big believer in independent bookstores, and I think that more people should give it a try.
Yeah.
And maybe one of these days I don't know, do a workshop or write a blog post about it or something, because I think it's something people should really entertain.
Okay, I'm going to go on the record on the air saying yes, please, something like that, because every one of my bookish friends that I talk to, so many of us do have that little dream of wouldn't it be nice, or maybe in my retirement, or oh, maybe one day. And just hearing you say that just feels really good to like for someone to give us permission and a really good reason outside of the fact that we want to, that this really could be a game changer for communities and for people. So I'm on the record, do that. I'll come. I'm close enough to you. If it's in person, I can drive to you. If it's on Zoom, I will be the first one in your Zoom room.
Fabulous. I love it. I love it.
Okay, so let's talk about if looks could kill. I am looking at the book, which is just this striking, powerful cover. The cover is amazing, listeners. It's this like red, blue slash purple, these powerful eyes. Oh my gosh. And the cover really is representative of what is to come in this book. This book is a powerhouse, Julie. This book, there are so many moving parts I can't wait to about. But before we do, I want you to give listeners give them the bookstore owner spiel of what this
Mhm.
book is about and what they might expect in it to kind of give them some context for what we'll talk about in case it is still brand new to them.
Sure, sure. Well, I think you did a brilliant job at the beginning, so I'll see if I can kind of get in that same vibe. If Looks Could Kill is a true crime historical thriller with a mythological twist. It's Medusa versus Jack the Ripper in the Gilded Age Bowery, meaning the late 1880s in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And it is a story of girls who link elbows and together go after the men and women, but mostly the men, Pearl. And this is a climate where, the Bowery we kind of romanticize as this, and we kind of romanticize the 1880s and the what we call the gay 90s, which different meaning of the word than we now use, but we romanticize it as this sort of charming, nostalgic balloons and the songs, and as though it's all sort of quaint and funny. But it wasn't funny because it was sort of rested on literally the bodies of young women who were recruited and held captive and trafficked in a booming sex industry in this part of the city. So the two main characters are Tabitha and Pearl, and they arrive in Lower East Side as volunteers in the Young Salvation Army. And so there's a sort of religious component to their mission, but they really are there because they want to do some good. They want to help. And a young woman that they talk to and help ends up being um, imprisoned in a brothel situation. And that fires them with resolve. They're going to do something about it. They're going to go after the perpetrators. They're going to spring this girl out of the hell she's in. And the course of this work brings them in contact with, I'm going to try not to spoil too much. They cross paths, quite literally, with Medusa and with Jack the Ripper. And I can talk a little bit more about like why Medusa versus Jack the Ripper. But before I do, I want to just really focus on these young women who have sort of uh, they're empowered young women who are determined to face the impossible odds of a hugely powerful, wealthy, and criminal industry, and they want to bring about a change. They have one girl in mind that they want to rescue, but they also are really, defying the citadel of this huge institution. And so I love these girls. I love Tabitha. I love Pearl, and I love how they do not get along. They are two feisty, opinionated young women who couldn't be more different. Oil and vinegar, fighting constantly, and yet they are so brave and so resolute in their determination to make a difference in the world and then to save their young friend. And so, in the course of this work, these larger forces of true violence against women as sort of exemplified, right, by Jack the Ripper and Medusa, who has been seen by many as a sort of empowering avatar of survivors and overcomers of violence against women. So I kind of think of it as like the King Kong versus Godzilla of forces of where violence against women is at the epicenter. It's Clash of the Titans between two enigmatic figures, whether drawn from myth or from history, figures that are more metaphor than person, really, to us today. And they are going to go at it just like King Kong versus Godzilla, in the crowded city streets
Yeah.
of Manhattan. And these young women are going to be swept up in it. So that was not short. I've got to work on my
No, it was
shorter.
perfect. It was perfect. It really was. You gave a taste of all of the different moving parts that are in there without giving too much away. I thought it was perfect. And I do want to ask you before we go into other pieces, why? Why this? Why Jack the Ripper? Why Medusa? And we'll talk more about some of the other moving parts there, but I would love for you to dive into the how in the world did this come to be?
Hmm. Hmm. So I think there's like two answers to the question of why. Like one would be take us on, recreate for us the mental thought processes that led you to make these choices. What were you thinking about? How'd you get there? And then there's a sort of deeper, more symbolic why, or a more psychological why. Like why did this resonate? Why these ideas and why now?
Mhm.
Um, One thing that I always find is that, a book comes out a year and a half after you finish working on it. And it's often more timely at that time than you could have even anticipated at the time that you were writing it. And that's usually not a good thing, right? I mean, we don't want the world to be moving in a direction where books about violence against women are more urgent than ever. But here we find ourselves, I think. Um, we, I certainly never thought growing up that I would live as an adult in a world where women's rights were eroding, where women's safety under the law was fading, and I'm not just talking about the sort of obvious reproductive rights questions that make headlines, but I think that women's sovereignty over their own lives is under question, right? So that's one aspect of I'm always drawn to stories about young women who face down the barrel of a society that is constructed to limit them and who refuse to accept those limits. I think if there's a theme that kind of brings my young adult titles together, it's that grappling with reality and that determination to speak out and stand out and not go quietly into submission. So, why Medusa? Why Jack the Ripper? How did we get these two monstrous figures in the same arena? Well, I had written Lovely War, which came out in 2019, and that is a book where Greek gods are the storytellers, and in particular, Aphrodite, the goddess of love, narrates two love stories set during World War One. So we have these two sort of luscious romances as told to us by Greek gods. And that was really delightful. I loved writing that book. I loved exploring World War One. I loved falling in love with those characters. I loved what looking at young lives and their young loves through the lens of being the goddess of all love could could do for me as a storyteller. I loved being Aphrodite. I loved exploring what it meant to be the god of love, not just sex and lust and romance and passion, but like all love. And I loved even exploring the god of war, the god of music, and Lord of the Underworld. All these themes, which are so much bigger than our words can do justice to. They kind of need supernatural forces like deities to embody them so that we can even begin to do justice to their power. So I'd had this wonderful experience writing Lovely War, but I never want to write the same book twice. So I needed to do something different, but I didn't want to leave Greek mythology behind, but I thought I would leave the gods behind and focus on the monsters. So I did some digging to figure out which Greek monster am I interested in. I decided I wanted to explore a feminine monster, female monster. The Sphinx and the Hydra weren't really doing it for me. I think, like a lot of women, Medusa really spoke to me. Um, and she's one of the most resonant, one of the most evergreen figures in Greek mythology, I think. Um, so so I began to think about a Medusa story, and I started writing all these beginnings set in, classical antiquity and in the like her origins and what it might have been like for her in her early existence prior to her murder. So that was all fine, but it wasn't quite landing. And so then I began to think maybe I should put Medusa in some other place and time. Um, and that posed a few problems. For one thing, it's a super story buzzkill if somebody just turns you into stone. Like whether they look at you or you look at them, boom, instant stone. Like
Right.
you can't
Done.
really go anywhere from there. So I decided early on, I'm gonna interpret this my way. And the book begins with a definition or two definitions of the word petrify, to terrify someone or to turn them to stone. The idea being you're immobilized as though you're turned to stone with fear. So I thought I'm more interested in the psychological interpretation of petrify than this physiological definition. And I am going to explore the idea of Medusas who can go out into the world, who can modulate and moderate their effect on others, who can even kind of manipulate whether or not they appear to be a Medusa, a Gorgon with snakes for hair. That gave me so much more scope for possibility for Medusas who could go out into the world, change the world, and be changed by the world. If all you do is turn things to stone, you're more an object. You're more of a weapon than a person. And I do think, interestingly, I do think that the Medusa myth is sort of a way of exploring the fantasy of an ultimate weapon, the fantasy of a weapon that cannot be resisted, cannot be overcome. And I find it so interesting that our earliest storytellers, when brainstorming around the idea of what would be an ultimate weapon, came up with the idea of an ugly woman. I think that says a lot,
It's so
personally.
true.
But in any case, I wanted my Medusas to be people.
Yeah.
So I made that decision. So and a friend of mine, Nancy Werlin, said she's an author, a wonderful best-selling award-winning author. She said, you really like the Victorian era. Why don't you situate Medusa in the Victorian era? And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I could sort of picture like the puffy sleeves and the Victorian dresses and the sort of dark streets and the mist and smoke and the gas lamps. I thought, okay, I'm feeling this. I'm feeling this. But I thought, why don't I set it in New York instead of London? And honestly, partly that was because it was still COVID. And like I felt like I could drive to New York, but I was less able to fly to London. That was just one of many factors. But I had written some stories set in Britain, so I wanted to do something set in New York. So now I've got late Victorian era, I've got Medusa, and I've got New York City. And I thought I want to do the Lower East Side where all the immigrants were coming into the city, were super crowded, super congested. That had the right energy for me. So I've got my place, I've got my time, and I've got my monster. And I'm trying to kind of figure this out. And then I ran smack into a sort of philosophical dilemma, which is that I really wanted my Medusa to be this girl power avenger. I wanted her punishing the bad guys. I wanted feminist revenge. I wanted women to have the ultimate power over the men who usually have ultimate power over them. I wanted that so badly. But I don't actually believe in a world where we just exterminate
Right.
even bad guys. I don't believe in a world where one strike and you're dead. I, I can't write that book. I can't reconcile myself to that way of engaging with the world. That's not what I believe. That's not how I think we arrive at a just society. So now what do I do? Because I still want my butt kicking, but I don't want to be untrue to myself. So I thought, I just really need a villain. I need a scenario where someone deserves it. I need a scenario where the guilt is unambiguous and
Clear.
where it's a special case. It's a special case. So I'm reading this book about the Bowery, one of the neighborhoods in the Lower East Side that was so full of vice and brothels and crime and immigrants and all these seedy, gritty gangs of New York things. And this passage in the book mentioned notable people that had passed through the Bowery or gotten their start there, like Harry Houdini and Irving Berlin and Lady Gaga, and like um oh gosh, Leon Trotsky had spent some time there. Oh, and by the way, possibly Jack the Ripper spent time living there. And I was like, wait, what? What? Like, pull over the car. I'm listening to this audiobook. What did you say? And it turns out that a very credible suspect in the Jack the Ripper investigations had left London after the last killing, slipped bail, fled to Manhattan, trailed by Scotland Yard detectives, and holed up in the Bowery until he was able to give the detectives the slip. And I just was like, it could not be better. It could not be better for what I need for this story. I need a special case of a villain who deserves Medusa's wrath. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm here for this. So that suspect's name is Francis Tumblety. Now, I have to be clear, I do not know if he was Jack the Ripper. But thanks to a scholar who devoted years of his life to following this guy's every move, and it turns out in the 1880s, like the newspaper was like today's, Instagram. Everywhere you went for lunch, ended up being in the news. So we actually have quite a lot of documentary evidence of where this guy was at any given time. And he had a lot of entanglements with the law. And so we have all these testimonies in court, blah, blah, blah. So I was able to take that research and just plop this guy into my story as the Ripper. It all fits so perfectly. And so the the book allows me to explore questions about a world that is so willing to wield violence against women to keep them under subjugation, and what it would look like if the violent power rested in women's hands. What would they do with it? What would they do with it? Um, and that's If Looks Could Kill, and I love it to death.
You love it to death. I loved it to death. Listeners are going to love it to death. I just want to thank you for that look into your brain and how all of that worked. Because as I was reading it, right, there's a lot in the book. As you were saying, it's part true crime, it's part historical fiction, it's part love story. It's just part everything. And as I was reading and putting all the pieces together in my head, I just kept thinking, how in the world did she conceptualize all of this together? And I love knowing how an author really stitches that together for a story for the reader. I feel like it helps me appreciate the story even more, but you just like indulged every curiosity I had reading it of why this and how this, and it just comes so together so beautifully with that last thing you said, which is what if? What
Mm,
if that power were there? For me, oh, there were so many things as I was thinking about as I read. I think the most striking thing for me, like I already commented on the cover of how it is just this burst of color, this intensity of color on the page that literally from the get-go was replicated in your words from that first prologue. I I'm a feeling person anyway. I feel like sometimes people probably tell me I feel a little bit too much, but there was emotion and there was I hate to say connection with some of the ideas that are on the page, but there was a I was there. Like I was there. And sometimes I liked that I was there, and sometimes I did not like that I was there, and sometimes I was happy and sometimes I was scared. You just made me feel all the feels, like all of the emotion. And I feel like your story is still stuck in me in a really good way. I feel like it kind of crept in, and your question of what if those women throughout history shared that power, and it just, I did get philosophical and go to the, well, what if it isn't all of us? What if this idea of having this kind of power, of course, not for violence, not for revenge, not that, my hair is going to turn into snakes and I'm going to turn people to stone, but what if there's more than I thought? It was just
Mm.
such a, I went from this feeling person to this literally empowered one at the end, thinking, I got to spend some time with this idea. That is what I was taking away of a roller coaster of emotions to just feel like I was standing a little bit taller when I was done reading it. I think that's a gift you give to readers through this amazing connection of stories that you have woven.
That means so much to me. I'm goose pimpling right now.
Good.
I want my readers to feel empowered. I want that. I've been talking with my husband about how to share the message of this book. And one of the ideas that we sort of hit upon, and I actually have to credit my editor for this, talking about the idea of like to Medusify, because some of these characters in the story become Medusas.
Yeah.
And that is a violent transformation. That's a painful transformation. It's a very frightening one, but ultimately an empowering one. They have the ability to kind of turn that on and off. And perhaps you'll know what I'm talking about, but there's a character in the end. She doesn't even need to outwardly Medusify. She knows it's in her. And that creates
Yeah.
a boldness and a fearlessness as she confronts men, as she confronts specifically, sexist, hostile, men who, want to objectify her or whatever. She's fearless because she knows that there's a Medusa in her. So when you talked about standing taller and feeling more empowered, I'm just beyond thrilled because that's what I want. I want girls to Medusify and to know that they are fearless and they are powerful and that they can stare down the forces that have been threatening and intimidating women through the eons,
Mhm.
that they can stand up and they can clap back and they can stare back. And of course I can't trivialize the fact that you know many women can't physically resist the violence that comes their way. But I also believe that a fierceness of nature and of character and of persona and of personal carriage can help many girls and women um resist resist the kind of classic weak bully manipulative methods that do exist in our world. I would never wish to say that the real problem of violence against women in this world can just be solved by being more confident. And yet I do believe that it's going to take confidence for women to band together and to fight back and to resist and to seek justice and to seek change. So, um, thank you. Thank you for that. That means the world to me.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad because as I was preparing for the episode, I thought, how do I accurately convey what I was feeling as I was reading? And so I'm glad that it hit the mark I was hoping for. And I've written down Medusify. Like we can call on that. We can call on that idea. We can call on that spirit. And as you said, perhaps not in every situation, but to have just that inner boost of yourself, that inner belief, that inner reminder, that's going to be that's going to be on a sticky note on my wall. Like that is, I love how you've just given me like a one word phrase, a one word affirmation to really keep the ideas in this book close to
Mhm,
me, even though I have turned the last page.
mhm. Thank you. That means a lot. I'm seeing a T-shirt in my future.
Yes, yes, you are. You are seeing a t-shirt in the future. You've got some merch in the bookstore that is going to be, I could see us all banding together for that for sure. Now, you did mention, that you love a good author's note, right? Hence the name
Mm,
of the bookstore. And I do wanna say, I truly appreciated the author's note. I've known surface details of all of the different moving parts in the book. Um, but reading about them, like you lit a curiosity in me. Like I was going to Google, I was looking things up. I was like hiding my eyes in some cases of the descriptions in the book, but I really did appreciate your thoughts at the end. And I'd love for you to say a bit more about that of why you chose the things you chose to kind of explain and give reference to in the back of the book for readers.
mm. To me, it's so important. It's one of the most crucial parts of a historical novel is making very clear what's fiction and what isn't, and pointing people towards sources where they can learn more about the fascinating reality underlying the story. You know, if looks could kill is what happens when you throw Julie Berry at these ideas. But I want readers to throw themselves at these ideas, and specifically the ones that interest them most. Um, I benefit so much from scholarship by writers who devote their lives to really finding the truth of these complicated, thorny bits of our history, finding as much truth as can be found. And I'm so reliant on that scholarship, and I really want to return the favor if I can, and point readers of fiction who might not necessarily gravitate toward works of nonfiction in the direction of where they can learn more. And I think that's one of the really wonderful things that historical fiction can do is create a curiosity about the past that may not have existed prior, or a specific curiosity about a specific part of the past that may not have existed prior. So I love that. And my editor and I sort of laugh because like for to me, half of the book might be author's note, but like, paper costs and such, like we have to rein it in a little bit. Um, but I do really love to um, provide some real content there that shows what's real and what's fictive. And um I like to be very very clear and transparent about that.
Mhm.
um so and just give people those sources.
Yeah, which I love, but I truly love how you have taken that, and as you said, you've put Julie Berry on it and created just this world, this story, this idea, this reminder that we I'm tripping over my words because when you just said like you want readers to do the same, it was like, oh my God, that truly is embodying what we're saying about Medusify and find within and just to put yourself, to give yourself that permission and give yourself that power to do the same. Gosh, this is a story to be enjoyed, of course. It's a story to be devoured, but it is a story that truly could be a game changer for what women believe and what women think. Oh my
Well,
gosh,
I
Julie.
hope so. And that's the great privilege of getting to write for young people.
Mm,
um I hope, I believe and hope that men and women, boys and girls will read this book. I hope it will move them all in meaningful ways. I think that the Jack the Ripper hook will make this book appeal to young guys as well as young girls. Um, and I think it's crossover. So I think that it is both teen and adult in its interest.
I agree.
But I especially hope that young women will come away from this feeling powerful and feeling angry. Not that I wish to sow anger as like some kind of negative or unhappy thing, but I feel that we have to understand the context that our mothers and grandmothers and great grandmothers have lived through to bring us to this place where we now are today. We have to understand the prices they paid and the sacrifices they made and the pains they endured in order to value what we've been given and in order to fight to keep it and in order to protect and preserve it for our daughters someday. So I do, I guess I want a little of that anger, but I want it to be the kind of anger that is empowering and emboldening. Um, I also want to say too, and then you talked about like a book to be devoured and enjoyed. Mhm, my editor, who I keep referencing, she's wonderful. She'll always say, like, how do we let people know that it's also romantic and funny?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, in fact, we had all these different versions of like the flap copy, and like it was kind of funny because it's like dark, sinister, Medusa, Jack the Ripper, funny, ha romance. I was like, I'm not sure this is working. I think we need to kind of focus on the thriller, true crime aspect. I think that's the pitch. And she's like, okay, right, I get it, but how do we let people know that it's also romantic and funny? And so as I started talking to people about this book, I'd be like, Medusa versus Jack the Ripper, and it's this and it's that, and it's also a romance. And I started to realize people were like staring at me, and then I went, oh my gosh, they think it's a romance between Medusa and Jack the Ripper. So I've been like, no, 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 no,
Not
no.
that kind of
Jack the
romance.
Ripper is not part of the romance of this book, not even close.
No.
So yeah, whew.
Oh, that's
So there is a sweet romance in it between Tabitha, one of the young women in the duo of these Salvation Army girls who take on crime in the city, and Mike, a young bartender that she meets at an Irish pub. And I love watching them so much. I love um, it's a kind of classic case of the reader will clearly see that Mike is totally into Tabitha, and and they will, I think, believe that Tabitha genuinely doesn't get it. I get annoyed in stories when like guys into girl and girl, if she had a clue, if she had a brain cell at all, should be able to see it. But I hope that I've made it believable here that Tabitha would misread his
yeah.
obvious cues. So it is one of those like slow burn, watch him fall in love stories.
Yeah.
um, and there is, well, I feel there's humor throughout. You tell me.
No, I agree. I agree. That's why I threw it in there in the opening. That's why I love this book is for any kind of reader, right? It is the person who likes that true crime aspect. It's the person who likes the historical fiction. It's the person who likes the time period. It's the person who likes the location. It's the person who likes the mythology. It's the one who needs the love story. It's the one who needs the friendship and the one that needs personal development and transformation and all of the things. Like no matter what kind of reader you are, you're going to be able to find your thing on the page, but then you broaden us at the same time. And I feel like that's the kind of book that I love and it's also hard to come by where you can settle in the part that feels good to you and then your mind is just blown and opened up in those other areas. That's what your book does. And that's what I want to make sure readers understand. Like you're saying, how do we get them to know it's a book about this or this? I want them to know it's a book about whatever you need in your own reading life, and then you're going to realize you didn't know you needed the other stuff.
Can I just take you on tour with me? Because you're
Yes.
doing a much better job than I think I will be able to do. I mean, as you can see, I have not yet found a way to like succinctly describe this book in two sentences. So you are just hitting it out of the park. I'm bringing you with me.
Well, I would love that. And I will come with a printed t-shirt that says Medusify on it. Oh,
Fabulous.
I've loved talking to you about this book. I think between the two of us, we've adequately conveyed all of the amazingness that's inside. All of the readers are going to find themselves here. I'm just so grateful to be part of your launch and to have you come on and to talk about it. So thank you for that. And I would love for you before you go to let listeners know where they can find you so they can go to that backlist if they would like, but certainly to keep up with you and the release of If Looks Could Kill.
Sure thing. Well, so I'm Julie Berry, Berry, like strawberry. I'm always saying like the fruit. And my books are available anywhere. I'm going to really ask that you support your local independent bookstore if you're looking for my books. And if you don't have one, you can go to bookshop.org. You can pick a bookstore, even if it's not near you. You can pick a bookstore that will benefit from your purchase. So I'm gonna ask for that. My website is julieberrybooks.com, and my handle on, I think, all social media platforms is Julie Berry Books. I think Facebook might be Julie Berry Books page, but otherwise it's Julie Berry Books everywhere. I'm newly on TikTok. I'm on Instagram, Facebook. I've sort of left X behind, but I'm most of the places. And then Author's Note, my charming little bookstore, is authorsnote.com, and it is Author's Note bookstore on, I think, all social media platforms. So I hope you'll find us there. My backlist is everywhere. And what else? Well, there was something else I was going to say. Oh, where you can find me between September and October is all over the country. So please visit my website, julieberrybooks.com, and look at events because I am touring everywhere. And I would love to meet you in person and babble at you about If Looks Could Kill at a store that is inviting me in. So please check that out for my tour schedule. And Stephanie, thank you so much for this lovely conversation. You have absolutely made my day. I think I'm going to be floating the rest of the day on everything you've said. And I'm just so honored and thrilled that you love If Looks Could Kill. And thank you for inviting me.
Oh, you are so welcome. And I'm even more excited because even if I didn't catch you on those dates of the tour, I'm drivable. So I'm going to come say hello at some point to see you at that bookstore and then we can just keep talking about it together.
I would love that. I would absolutely love it. Well, you have a glorious day and everybody have happy reads and love to talk to you again sometime.
Thank you. And listeners, let me add my thanks. Thank you for listening to another episode of KidLit Love, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the KidLit Love podcast. You'll find links to all of the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes and at alitlife.com. You'll also find KidLit Love on Substack. That's where you'll find posts for each episode, monthly KidLit roundups, and an invitation to join my summer book club and go deeper into the world of children's literature. And if you loved this podcast and want more, you might like to listen to my other podcast called Get Literate. It's a podcast that explores all things books and reading, notebooks and writing to build a life you love. One more thing. If you loved what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish community of Kid Lit Love. Thanks for listening.